was just reaching for some water during the flight when I noticed my fingernails turning black at an alarming rate. As a doctor, I immediately recognized this as a sign of severe oxygen deprivation in my heart and lungs. Before I could even think of what to do, the bottle in my hand started warping and twisting, while the cup on my tray table began shaking violently. The flight attendant quickly caught on that something was wrong. She rushed to her seat, buckling up while shouting for passengers to fasten their seatbelts immediately. But it was already too late. The next second, we hit severe turbulence. Water from cups started floating in midair, and passengers who hadn't buckled up were sucked upward by the sudden depressurization and violent air currents. The entire cabin shook violently, and passengers were frozen in terror. I watched as people desperately clung to their armrests, silently praying they'd make it through alive. I noticed the captain would recognize the crisis too, quickly putting on his oxygen mask. The cabin's depressurization caused the overhead oxygen masks to drop down. Passengers frantically grabbed them and started breathing, but my wife passed out before she could get oxygen, unable to breathe properly. To save her, I stumbled over to the crew area and grabbed an emergency oxygen bottle from the emergency kit, quickly getting it on her face. That saved my unconscious wife from the brink of death. After a series of violent jolts, the cabin pressure miraculously returned to normal. Flight 7500 had survived its first ordeal. To reassure everyone, the captain immediately made an announcement. He explained that we'd hit a storm while passing through air currents, which damaged one of the aircraft's seals and caused the pressure problem. They'd handled the emergency and would be lowering altitude to stabilize pressure, so passengers shouldn't worry too much. Only then did I and the other passengers finally breathe a sigh of relief. I thought the nightmare was over, but that's when strange things started happening to multiple people on board. It started with a middle-aged man who suddenly couldn't breathe. Flight attendant Lisa immediately got on the intercom, asking if any doctors could help. Hearing the announcement, I rushed over right away. But the man's condition was deteriorating rapidly. He kept clawing at his mouth with his fingers, and before we could figure out what he was trying to do, blood suddenly sprayed from his mouth. Then his whole body began convulsing horrifically, like something out of a zombie movie. But he quickly went still. When we laid him on the floor, I realized he'd already stopped breathing. With someone inexplicably dead on board, the captain immediately reported to ground control, asking them to confirm the deceased passenger's information. Since we still had an hour until landing, the crew had to move the body to the business class cabin on the upper deck, covering it with a blanket. But not long after, I spotted a young man sneaking over to the corpse. Turns out, when the crew was moving the body, this guy had noticed the deceased was wearing an incredibly expensive gold watch. He was trying to steal it. After yanking the watch off, instead of leaving immediately, the guy pulled out his phone to take selfies with the corpse. He kept showing off to the camera, even starting to mock the dead man. Then, in the next instant, the corpse turned its head toward him. The body stood up. The young man collapsed to the floor, screaming in terror. Meanwhile, I noticed the flight attendant encountering something bizarre too. A fighter jet had appeared outside the window. In the cockpit, the signal was getting increasingly worse, making it impossible to contact ground control. Even more terrifying, when the flight attendant went back up to check the business class cabin, she found that the corpse had mysteriously vanished, along with the watch thief who'd disappeared without a trace.